Hey guys, I'm Urizi. This story is all about what if Naruto created a criminal organization. When Naruto Uzumaki's dream of becoming Hokage is seemingly stolen from him, he discovers a new path. One even more difficult and harder to reach. With a family of his own making, he will take the world by storm, showing them that rogues and outcasts of the world can stand at the top. Before we proceed with the story, please like and subscribe to this channel if you liked the video, and don't forget to check the description for the other works of the author if you liked the story. Let's start. Chapter 8, Emergence of Talent. Are you ready for this, Naruto? This will be a short test of all your technical skills in combat. You will use the methods I taught you to face me. In response, I will use only techniques and weapons you know as well. The aim will be to show you how to make better use of your clones in combat and to become more creative in their use. Any questions? Naruto stood across from his sensei on the other side of the clearing. There was a mixture of nervousness and excitement running through him. Instead of regular physical training with Hirate, his sensei had suggested a sparring match. It would be the first time he would actually spar with Noriyuki. So much of his abilities remained a mystery to him. Actually, pretty much everything about him was a mystery, but that wasn't the point right now. Yes, I have too, Naruto said frankly. First, are you actually going to stick to the jutsu I know? No offense, but you told me criminal rule number 4 was, never give the full truth in anything you do. Putting aside all the times you tricked me to get a laugh, of course. You're not going to do something weird, are you? Ha 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 ha. Who can say? Naruto rubbed his eyes. He wasn't going to like this. Okay then, question 2. Actually more curious than an actual question. I just got to ask, why did you transform into me? That's right, across Naruto was his sensei using the transformation jutsu to look and sound exactly like him. A bit off-putting from how different his mannerisms were in his body. He shrugged. Well, putting aside I have more than 9 decades of experience over you and could defeat you by sneezing. It appears to me that my greatest advantage, even if I limited myself to your level, would be the 40 centimeters difference between us. A fact that I know just spurs you to no end. He put on a sly grin. It looked creepy when it was his face doing it. It was probably because his teeth looked sharper than Noriyuki's. Needling me about my height, Naruto deadpanned. He tipped his hat slightly. How original. It kills me inside that you're starting to take after Hirate, you know. Like he's more important to you than me, you know. Noriyuki sobbed, clutching his chest. Strangely enough, I'm starting to feel pity for the man. And don't make fun of my verbal tick. Noriyuki pouted. So mean, Naruto-chan. Can we get on with this already? Naruto groaned. Fine. You know the drill. Use the system I taught you and let's see what you came up with. Finally. Shadow Clone Jutsu. 4 clones appeared beside him. It had been Noriyuki's directive that unless he was scouting or needed a large-scale distraction, he had to limit his use of clones to 4. Naruto had originally protested this. He had always done his best work when he could rely on a bunch of clones. What preceded was him creating hundreds of clones at his sensei's behest, only for them to be destroyed by a single wind jutsu. Noriyuki then admonished him for using a tactic that wasted nearly half his chakra when using less would have made them harder targets and would have allowed him to use other, more effective jutsu. Due to this, Naruto was then limited to making 4. The purpose of this being what Noriyuki called the 5-fist formation. The formation was incredibly simple, no more than 2 clones could be used for direct combat. Similarly, no more than 2 could be used for support either. 1 clone had to have the role of spotter, so that they could dispel at any time or cover the group. This meant 3 clones plus himself were for combat, while 1 clone was to watch their backs. For the last 5 days he had gone over numerous combinations and strategies with Noriyuki and jutsu that had a good combination. Wind, as he found out, could be applied to almost any jutsu. While he may have made great strides in his wind training, his library of jutsu was limited. He knew 2 wind jutsu and had practiced coding his weapons in wind chakra. Thanks to his shadow clones and, more importantly, his breathing to channel his focus, he skipped years of training in this area. It was still a mentally taxing training, as he found out from using his shadow clones for training. Noriyuki waved him over. Okay, then let's start. Come at me whenever you want. Just focus on your timings with your clones. These ones are strengthened, right? Naruto nodded. He had taken Noriyuki's simplified explanation of chakra to heart. If his regular clones possessed too much yang chakra, then his shadow clones could possess stronger bodies if he channeled twice the amount of chakra through his right arm. Granted, that only meant they could take 2 or 3 more hits than regular shadow clones. It still made a big difference in a fight, but not by much. Fan out, Naruto ordered. One of his clones disappeared behind the tree line while the 2 stayed up front and one slightly behind him. This was the most optimal position for him. He could assist both the front line attackers and support the back. Naruto had further developed the basic tactics that the front line focuses on taijutsu while support focuses on ninjutsu and ranged weapons. Readying himself, Naruto looked onto his sensei, who was still standing there, grinning like a loon. Not going to create any clones, sensei? He shrugged. Who says I already haven't? I limited myself to 4 just like you. Naruto frowned. Noriyuki was always quick to do things. It didn't surprise him that he could use jutsu without hand signs. It seemed like it was on the low end of his abilities. A reminder that he said he would limit himself to his jutsu, not necessarily his abilities in using them. Not that he could change that fact if he wanted to. He thrusted his arm forward. Charge. The first clone ran up to attack. His guard was up and perfectly prepared to both block, attack, or dodge. His sensei didn't move from his pose. Take this, sensei. Hi-ya. The clone jabbed his sensei in the face. Naruto thought for a moment he had hit him. It was only another moment later that the clone's fist phased through it. If a puff of smoke, the regular clone disappeared, revealing the real Noriyuki standing behind it. Ugh. Naruto saw the clone sent flying back by his sensei's jab. Only being caught gruffly by his second clone before it could crash into him. Damn it. The clone cursed, grasping its jaw. Ha 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 ha. I never said they were all shadow clones. Good to know. Naruto threw a smoke bomb towards the ground. His side of the field filled with blue smoke. Naruto had come up with different plans based on the color of smoke his bombs expelled. It was a means of silently communicating his plans to his clones. His 2 frontline clones backed up towards him. Both transformed into kunai. He took a real one out of his breast pocket. He coated it with chakra before throwing it. His support clone already called out the seals behind him. He threw it towards his sensei. Shuriken Shadow Clone Jutsu. As his kunai multiplied into 100, he readied his 2 transformed clones. Wind style, immense breakthrough. Like Naruto expected, his sensei used one of the wind jutsu he taught him days earlier. The kunai and smoke quickly dispersed from the pressure of the wind. Naruto waited as it died down as he threw the 2 clones. He used the shadow shuriken jutsu to hide one of them in the shadow of the other. His sensei barely moved his head as he dodged his feint. He ran forward, putting himself into position. Nice effort, Naruto, but you'll have to try harder. Ha. We'll see. His shadow clone undid the transformation. Subtly he hid the second transformed clone as it stuck to the ground beside him while he threw one of his own kunai towards his now flanked sensei. His timing was good, but his plan was only half done. Unsurprisingly, his sensei had ducked when the kunai coming at him front behind was about to hit him. Naruto plucked it from the air, grasping it in a reverse grip, then brought it down on his sensei. I guess we shall. Ha 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 ha. He jumped back, hands in his pocket. He brought his foot up to block his kunai with a kick. Naruto was confused by the angle. He could see every moment. His blade tip would cut his heel and then it would dispel. Shing. Naruto blinked as a blade clicked out of the shoe's sole to block his kunai. He had desperately wanted to comment on it at that moment but didn't have the time. Over his adversary's shoulders he could see a transformed version of himself about to come up behind his shadow clone. He smiled viciously, pushing off the hidden shoe blade and falling to his hands and knees, waiting for his support clone. Wind style, Gale Palm. His support clone blasted it at his opponent, sending him flying back towards the other 3. Naruto looked up from his crouched position. Both of his clones, the transformed one and the untransformed one were in position. The untransformed one took a kunai to his back shoulder. He fought through the pain as he grasped his attacker's wrist with his right hand. He reached out, grabbing the clone of his sensei that was blasted towards them with the wind jutsu with his left. This was it. Boom, Naruto muttered. Boom. In a white explosion, the transformed clone which had primed its chakra blew up, taking him and the three others with him. Naruto stood up, dusting himself off. He couldn't help but smirk. His strategy panned out. He couldn't help feel satisfaction. How about that, sensei? He yelled out to the open field. He knew his sensei was still out there, but he didn't know where. Not bad. I see you're not the only one who made different clones. But it cost you 2 of them to make it happen. Yes, but I have 2 while you only have 1. The numbers seem to be in my favor. Fair point. I better change that then. Mwahahaha. Stop laughing. You said you would only use weapons and jutsu I possess. What the hell was up with that hidden blade then? Oh? Didn't I tell you? Click your heels together and you'll see. Lo and behold, Naruto did click his heels together. From the tip of the soles 2 small 4-inch blades shot out. He knew they weighed more than regular shinobi sandals. He figured that it was because they were steel-toed, so he hadn't given it a second thought. This was like the hat incident from a few days ago where his sensei had told him to apply chakra to his forehead to keep his hat from flying off. That had been a problem for weeks and irritated him to no end when it flew off every 2 seconds during wind training. You couldn't have told me this before? Do you know how useful these could have been, like, half a dozen times during your special challenges? Naruto's teeth gritted at the memories. I really want to hit you right now, sensei. Tee-hee-hee-hee. You're going to have to find me first, Naruto-chan. Emboldened, Naruto scanned the field. The voice was resounding all around him to throw off his location. He remained vigilant though. His guard up and kunai in hand. He didn't see him, but something felt off. Suddenly, images filled his mind as his hidden clone dispelled. He had felt a slight rubble at his feet. Images of his sensei popping up out of the ground behind him. He spun around only moments before he felt a strong jab to his forearm. Surprise! Noriyuki began a relentless flurry of jabs and hooks towards his face and abdomen. Naruto kept his muscles flexed while keeping tucked into his guard. His skill with this style had improved, but he was still a long way from being fluent with it. You're not going to win just by blocking, Noriyuki said, trying to needle him to drop his guard to attack. Naruto knew he was being baited, but he really wanted to hit his irritating sensei. Against his better judgment, he stuck out his fist to break his sensei momentum. Tisk tisk tisk. Too bad for you, Naruto. Arg. His attack was easily evaded. His sensei was doing the style's crescent shift technique to weave underneath his guard and position himself behind him. Naruto spun forward as he felt a fist hit him on his left shoulder blade. He fell to the grass as he couldn't get his balance back. You need to work on your taijutsu more, Naruto. At least your guard was solid. Anyway, now it seems like it's 2-on-2. Spitting grass out of his mouth, he pushed himself back onto his feet. Yeah. Just wait until the match is over first. He took his stance again, ready for his sensei's next move. Oh, this match is just about over. I'll finish this with your signature jutsu, Noriyuki boasted. Signature jutsu? You mean shadow clones? Naruto questioned. Not quite. Noriyuki held out his hand. A pale blue light began to emanate from his palm before wisp began to form circles. Those circles spun faster and in multiple directions. A sphere of chakra forming from them. Naruto could only stand gaping as his sensei smiled like a demon from hell with a fully formed Rasengan blazing in his hand. Naruto thought he would charge at him with it to catch him off guard. To his continued surprise, he slammed it into the ground. Rasengan, Dirt Clod Storm. As the Rasengan continued to tear up the ground, rock and large chunks of dirt flew at Naruto. It was hard enough to weave from punches and kicks, but now he had to dodge lest a rock accidentally brain him. Mwahahahahaha. He could hear his sensei laughing like a maniac at his discomfort. Sadly, he could barely make anything out as dirt and rock chunks filled the air. By the time the bastardized attack ended he was covered in dirt from head to toe. Seems like my attack was super effective. Ha 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 ha. Naruto glowered as he coughed up dirt from his mouth. That's it. He's going down. He thought angrily. He held out his hand, gesturing to his support clone. You think that's funny? Let me show you what a real Rasengan can do. The shadow clone came up beside him. Its hand hovered over his palm for a moment before grabbing his wrist and twisting his arm behind his back. Naruto couldn't react fast enough as he was pinned to the ground with a kunai pressed against his neck. For Naruto it seemed like his shadow clone just betrayed him. Was it genjutsu? He thought. No, his sensei had said to only use jutsu he knew and he didn't know any genjutsu. He was totally lost. Asterisk clap. Clap, asterisk. Okay, let him up. Session's over. Let's recap. Naruto sat up as the clone on him dispelled. He rolled his shoulder to shake off the pain. Not bad Naruto, you did better than I expected. What the heck just happened? Simple. That shadow clone was one of mine, not yours. What? When? I didn't see it dispel. Release the jutsu and you'll see. Naruto did. From the clone's memories he could see it being ambushed from behind then gagged and tied up. It lay watching in the tall grass as his sensei's clone came up behind him and pinned him to the ground. Because it didn't dispel he didn't know the difference. Let's take this step by step. From the start you should have thought more on why I transformed into you. It wasn't just so that we would be the same height. Naruto's eyes opened wide, now realizing this. You made them so that I would eventually confuse the two, but when did you switch them? You're getting too far ahead. From the very beginning what I was after was to get rid of your spotter. Shinobi are very cautious by nature. There will always, and I mean literally, always, be someone in the rear of the formation in case there is an ambush. It's a tactic as fundamental as breathing. While you focused on the clones in front of you I was aiming for your hidden clone. Naruto nodded. He had been focused more on the enemies in front of him. He had thought himself clever for using the clone's memories to stop the sneak attack. It never occurred to him that his sensei was aiming for him to do that. You should have dispelled your support clone. It was still covering your back and unlike your spotter it wasn't hidden. Never sacrifice a hidden piece when a known one is available. Yes, that makes sense. They were too focused on their roles to adapt to a different one. Correct. Just because you have a clone assigned a position doesn't mean you can't change them when needed. In fact, you should make strategies for those situations. As for how I switched your clones, that was easy. Since your spotter was gone I used the Rasengan to distract you while my last one tied yours up. You were so riled that I used your best move against you that I knew you would want to try doing it yourself. That way my clone could get in close without any trouble. Plus you knew I needed a clone to make it, Naruto acknowledged. Noriyuki smiled at his insight. Indeed. It helped me that I knew your habits and your level. I must say those secret training sessions you have been sneaking out after dark for have really paid off. Your timings were well done. He ruffled Naruto's hair. Naruto could only smile bashfully as he rubbed the back of his neck. He should have known Noriyuki was aware of them. Yeah, but you had me beat from the start, sensei. Your tactics were easily worthy of a Chunin. This area is something that requires experience to grow. You can learn as many tactics as you want, but it requires trial and error to truly know their worth. I myself was never really good at tactics when I was your age. After living for a century you tend to see the bigger picture of a battle. I have no doubt you'll grow in this area too. You may not be a tactical genius, but you are imaginative and sly in your thinking. Both are invaluable against foes who think too logically. Naruto had thought about Shikamaru. He would have been considered a tactical genius. His planning skills were better than anyone he had seen. He doubted even Kakashi-sensei could match him in that. It was nice to hear that he also had talents in this area too. He had never been too big on complex plans in the past, but he found crafting and acting them out with his clones to be quite fun. He had learned a lot this past week. Is there anything else, sensei? Noriyuki scratched his sideburns. He was thinking about something. It's nothing too big. It's just, I noticed you don't really have any defensive jutsu. Naruto frowned. Can't those two wind jutsu be used to block attacks? They seemed good against projectiles. He wasn't sure about blocking full-scale jutsu though, especially fire jutsu. While wind is versatile, it has an offensive mentality to it. Even with its more defensive-oriented jutsu, it tends to be used as a means to wound enemies. Those can take too long to cast and are a bit advanced. No, you need something quicker and can hold up to heavy and blunt attacks. Perking up, Naruto asked, does this mean I'll need to learn a new element then? Like earth style or something? If he could learn another style he would be happy. He was still a long way from mastering wind. He had barely stopped the flow of the river with 3 clones to help him. Noriyuki-sensei did it by himself with his foot. The gap was clear. No, that would take too long, he muttered, pacing back and forth. We need a jutsu you could learn right away. Something quick and simple. He pursed his lips, tapping them. For the life of me though, I can't think of one that would fit that criteria. You must know at least one sensei. I mean, it seems to me like you know every jutsu. Ha. I wish. I certainly know a lot. Easily over 1,000, but sadly there are a few that even I can't do. Naruto folded his arms. I barely know 10. All of which you can do. Even my Rasengan, which took everything I had to learn, he muttered to himself. Aha. That's it. The Rasengan. The Rasengan. Naruto tilted his head. As a defensive jutsu. Noriyuki waved his hands. I don't mean the Rasengan itself, I mean a variation of it. A variation of the Rasengan that turns it into an invincible shield. A shock went down Naruto's back. The Rasengan was the 4th Hokage's jutsu. One that took him 3 years to make according to the Pervy Sage. The idea that his signature attack jutsu had a different variation to it made him excited. Really? Yes. I'll give you a brief explanation of it and show you how. It should only take an hour for you to learn. Alright then. What are we waiting for? Naruto was pumped now. More pumped than he had been these last 3 weeks. Noriyuki held out his hand. I'll make this quick and simple then. You'll have to practice on your own since we don't have much time. I need to prepare for the last special challenge tonight. Naruto deflated. Way to kill the excitement, sensei. Ha 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 ha. You're going to love it. The challenge to end all challenges. You're going to need your shakuhachi too. We'll be putting all that practice to use. Naruto wasn't too thrilled about what challenge would require him to play his instrument, but at the moment he didn't care. He was hopping back and forth in anticipation of this new jutsu. Sure, whatever, just show me already. On Noriyuki's palm the Rasengan flared. As you can see, the chakra is flowing into a sphere. All of the chakra is. Yes, I know that. It's flowing in a bunch of different directions while being contained into a ball. Good, then this variation should be simpler. I want you to layer your chakra like the Rasengan but only in one direction. Try to make it flatter and as wide as possible. Naruto frowned. One direction? Flatter and wider? That's the difference. Yes. You'll also want to increase the rotation even further to push its defensive capabilities to its maximum. The faster it spins, the stronger force it can disperse. Just watch. Noriyuki stepped back holding out his palm. In the center Naruto could see the initial formation of the Rasengan. He could make out the wisps of chakra as they rotated. Slowly the chakra began to swirl in one direction. Every second the disk of chakra became wider and wider until it covered Noriyuki's chest. He turned to the side to show that it wasn't as thick as the Rasengan was. That's all there is to it. Just a different variation of the Rasengan. That looks awesome, but how strong is it? I mean, what would you even call that jutsu? I'm not sure about the name since I just came up with it. As for how strong it is, well, let's find out. Use your clone to come at me with the Rasengan. We'll see how the two match up. Okay. Shadow Clone Jutsu. The shadow clone formed. On the clone's hand he formed the Rasengan. The clone looked pumped to be doing this. Testing out a brand new jutsu against the fourth Hokage was the number 2 reason for becoming a ninja in the first place. It didn't get better than this. Ready, sensei? Let's go then. Rasengan. Unnamed defensive jutsu. Seriously? He had to shout that out, Naruto internally griped, nearly tripping at its lameness. His sensei had some sort of superpower to just kill the moment. Right as they were battling with 2 high-level jutsu, the 2 jutsu collided. A large flash of light and an even more powerful shockwave emanated from the clash. Naruto had to shield his eyes from the intensity. In the aftermath he could see his clone landing several feet back, its right hand was red and his sleeve was singed black from the exchange. It fell to its knees in pain and subsequently dispelled. Naruto turned to his sensei whose jutsu was still spinning. It seems like it's stronger than the Rasengan sensei. Hard to believe the fourth Hokage's jutsu was beaten so easily. Noriyuki shook his head. No, they are about even. It was only my mastery over chakra control and vastly increased rotation speed that set them apart. Granted, even the fourth Hokage wouldn't have been able to match me with his Rasengan no matter how big he made it. Regardless, the jutsu is about blocking and should work perfectly for you. You can spend the next hour practicing it. With that I'll leave you to it. You did well, Naruto. Tomorrow should be interesting. He said as he waved Naruto off, walking back to town. Naruto gave a curious look. Every so often Noriyuki-sensei would mention the fourth Hokage. He knew the two had met. He had always wanted to ask about their encounter but never seemed to have the right moment. It made him curious. The fourth Hokage was said to be the greatest Hokage. Now though it seemed to him that the two may have fought each other in the past. Even with all the legends and stories about him, Noriyuki had this aura of strength that would have made the fourth hesitate. Creating a brand new counter to his jutsu in an instant would throw off anyone. An invincible shield, huh? He pictured the jutsu in his mind. Truthfully, it reminded him a lot of Neji's 8 trigrams palm rotation. Actually, the more he thought about it, the two were basically the same but on different scales. It just meant he would have to test it out the next time they met. He held out his palm, imagining his potential strikes. How he would block his gentle fist. Neji's rotation versus Naruto's spiraling shield. Ah, that's a good name, the Raisin Shield. He grinned. He had the name down, now it was time to master. 1,000 clones littered the field. Tomorrow was the last day and he had work to do. In the cool darkness Orochimaru sat in his hardwood chair. He sat there patiently, letting his body rest. His body was still in a period of transition, adjusting to his soul. In a way it was like an infant learning to walk. It couldn't just start walking. It had to build itself up over time. After another week or so before he could really start letting loose. He had so many setbacks recently that he would have to work very diligently to catch up on his work. Sadly this would be pushed even further back as he couldn't get Sasuke in time and had to settle for Genumaru's body instead. A capable child but seemingly unremarkable to others he saw. Taking his body would be his only real achievement in life. Giving it to him to use was more important than anything he would have done with it. A truly amazing honor. Orochimaru digressed. He had something else to take care of at the moment. Kabuto. Yes, Lord Orochimaru. Responded the spectacled boy as he flickered to his side. Has Sasuke arrived yet? I sense the curse mark nearby. It's potent and more malevolent than I had thought. Coo. Yes, he just arrived, my lord. Kabuto smiled smugly. It seems Sasuke didn't take his defeat to Naruto too well. He's been in a mood ever since. A malicious smile formed underneath his bandages. This was a strange yet amusing development for him. This had been the 4th time he had been surprised by that 9-tailed brat since their first encounter. First being in the Forest of Death when he showed more valor than Sasuke. The second was when he, beyond any reasonable expectation, mastered an advanced technique like the Rasengan. It was after defeating Sasuke, even with the full power of his curse mark, that he had become aggravated by his continual interference. Yes, after denying him his chance at such a splendid body and returning him back to the Leaf Village did he finally rethink the boy as a threat. He seemed to defy all logic. A dangerous element that couldn't be ignored. When his spies told him that the boy had been sent to Hozuki Castle for some inexplicable reason, he thought he had an opportunity to be rid of him inside the inescapable prison. He chastised himself for thinking so lightly of the boy, and he had been surprised for the fourth time. Oh, and has there been any news of where Naruto has vanished to? If the boy had been thrown away by the Leaf Village like the fools he knew them to be, then he had an opportunity. The Nine Tails was to be his weapon to destroy the village once he possessed the Sharingan. So why not take this opportunity to have both under his thumb? I'm sure he's angry and upset after being abandoned by the village he holds so dear. Kabuto adjusted his glasses, his frown deepening. I'm sorry, my lord. There have been no sightings of him. All our spies have been on the lookout, but it seems that he's well hidden. Strange. Orochimaru hummed. The boy had never been one for such secrecy. It had been surprising he had escaped in the first place. If he wasn't certain that multiple parties in the Leaf Village weren't also searching for him, then he would have thought it was some clever ruse of Tsunade's or maybe even Danzo. This meant either the boy was more skilled than he let on, or there was some other player involved. His thoughts drifted to the Akatsuki. They would have had the power to pull this off, but he was certain it wasn't them either. Kabuto had played the role of double agent with Sasori and found they hadn't collected the boy yet. This was another mystery in the back of his mind. Should we increase the number of spies, my lord? I'm certain we could find him if we increased our search to other nations. We may find some clue to his whereabouts. No. He'll turn up eventually. I'm more curious about the boy's true talents. Should he surface, I want any available pawns to bring me his head. This should prove beyond any doubt of what the boy is hiding. He smiled at the thought. Playing with his prey was always so enjoyable for him. He turned to Kabuto, who didn't look pleased about this. Are you sure we should be wasting our limited resources like this, my lord? He may have gotten lucky in the past, but even a fool's luck runs out eventually. Perhaps. However, I don't mind wasting tools on this. If need be, I can get more. Either way, the boy will be captured or killed. Either we will get him for ourselves, or we'll thwart whatever plans the Akatsuki had for him. I win-win regardless. Kabuto smirked. Excellent, my lord, it will be done at once so that we can dash. Creak. Light creeped into the edges of the room as the door to his study creaked open. On the other side of the threshold stood the scion of the Uchiha clan and his future vessel. He had a hospital gown tied around his waist. On his left shoulder he could see massive bruising. It was slightly twisted and pronounced. It seemed like he got the full brunt of the Rasengan. I guess Naruto didn't get by on just luck after all. Orochimaru thought. Of course the child wouldn't ambush Sasuke or use trickery to win. The two probably beat the hell out of each other like ungraceful little children. Something Naruto has had much more practice in. Orochimaru. I have come for power. Give it to me. So I can kill him. Sasuke's voice was cold and toneless. There was no hesitation in his voice. His beautiful Sharingan was blazing with an intensity that rivaled Itachi's. Yes, this was what he wanted. Rough clay to be molded and groomed to be a perfect vessel. With it he could learn all the mysteries of nature and achieve power to do as he pleased without interference. You dare speak to Lord Orochimaru this way? It's only because of his influence that you were able to get out of the Leaf Village after your recapture. We lost a lot of assets to bring you here. Kabuto stepped up. Irritated due to Sasuke's rude demand. It sometimes stumped even him when Kabuto was showing genuine loyalty or just faking. That was an amusing game he played with himself. It didn't really matter either way. He was useful and he would keep him around until he wasn't. No need for hostilities, Kabuto. The boy is clearly upset that he wasted those precious weeks in the hospital. Perhaps I should have marked Naruto instead. He's shown more promise than another Leaf Genin I know of. Sasuke's face contorted in anger. His curse seal was activating. It was quite the sight to behold. Next time I see that fool, I won't hold back. I'll go back to the Leaf Village to kill him after I end Itachi. His punishment for getting in my way. Back to the village to kill him? Oh? Dante, you want to know what your teammate has been up to? I don't care about anything he does. Then you won't mind if I kill him then, do you? Orochimaru asked. He wanted to know how he should work with this. If he captured Naruto, then it would be best to keep them both separated until he acquired the Sharingan. I said I don't care. What he does or what happens to him doesn't matter. So long as I have the power to kill Itachi. Sasuke screamed. His Chidori sparked to life, covering his arm. Kabuto jumped in front of him, kunai in hand in order to defend against the raging Uchiha. It was an amusing sight. On a different day it would have been amusing to see. Sadly, both of them were too valuable to waste. Slowly he rose from his tore the bandages from his mouth. He bared his fangs. Then come Sasuke and I will give you what you seek. Pain. All-consuming and aching pain. Not his body. No. That was easy to deal with. He could be beat up to an inch of his life and be completely fine. This pain emanated in his head. It was throbbing. He could literally hear his own pain thumping in his ears. It was made worse from the light. It stabbed at his eyes to the point he was scared to actually open them. He tried to shift from his back. He felt stuck, or rather the left half of his body did. Like something was pressing down on his left arm and leg. They felt a little numb. He tugged on them a little, hoping to get them free. He really didn't want to open his eyes. There was a grunt. He didn't make it. It sounded familiar though. He tugged again only to hear the same sound. Guess I have no choice, he grimaced. He slowly unhinged his eyes to the blinding light. He could make out a blurry figure next to him. He could make out long dark brown hair and a tanned face. Slowly he was realizing who was next to him but didn't understand why she would be sleeping next to him. Misery. Nar, Yuto, she mumbled. She was still half asleep. Before Naruto could make any sound he felt her slide her hand up to his cheek. He lay frozen as she brought her lips to his. His whole face tingled when her soft lips pressed against his. He could faintly smell alcohol from her breath. Now that he thought about it, the inside of his mouth had the faint taste of red wine. He had to get up and figure out what was going on. He gently pushed on her to break their kiss. Naruto's hand twitched. He could feel something soft, something he had felt when he used his sexy jutsu. Misery wasn't wearing a shirt. A cold realization was that he wasn't wearing any clothes either. Just what the hell happened? Using more effort this time he slipped out from under Misery. A shift in their shared blanket revealed she was also without any clothing. Naruto didn't like the implications. He wanted to yell and freak out, but that wouldn't do him any good. Answers. He needed answers on what the hell happened last night. He could only vaguely recall what happened after his training yesterday. Clink. Flinching, he looked down at his foot. 2 empty wine bottles were next to the bed. He picked them both up. It was your fault, wasn't it? He muttered softly with an angry undertone towards the inanimate object. He started to see the repercussions of too much drinking. So much of being an adult had become so clear to him over the last 20 days that he half wished he would stay a kid forever. He stepped over Siya and Anoka, who slept on a large futon. Both were also scantily clad with only a large shirt covering them. He looked around to see this wasn't his hotel room but most likely Misery house. His clothes were scattered around the room. The tie he wore was hanging from the ceiling fan. Hastily he got dressed, not really bothering to make sure everything was on correctly, rather, he just needed to get his pants, shirt, and shoes on. Going out the front door wasn't a good option. While Misery's parents weren't home, there was still an old granny next door that checked up on her. The window would be the best option. I'm really pathetic, aren't I? It was a sobering thought that he was doing something he would have shad assessed pervy sage for a month ago. He really was becoming a degenerate. He looked back up at the window as he landed on the street below. I hope they won't be too mad with me. Good morning. Okay. Naruto gripped his head as it ached from the loud noise. He turned to see his sensei standing next to him with his hands on his hips and a shit-eating grin. Don't be so loud, sensei, he whined. My head feels like it got bludgeoned with a metal pipe. Feel like crap, huh? Well, you certainly look like it. But I guess that's normal after becoming a man. His grin spread even wider, his eyes full of amusement. Naruto sputtered. I don't. I have no clue what you're talking about, yeah no. Sure yeah don't. He patted Naruto's shoulder. Naruto swiped off his arm. He jammed his finger into his side. What the hell happened last night? I can't remember a damn thing, and next thing I know I wake in Mijori's bed naked the next morning. Ark. He gripped his own head. Shouting right now was out of the question. Ha 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 ha. Who can say? I'm sure it will come back to you eventually. Anyway, morning is a bit of a stretch now. It's a little past noon. Ugh. I feel like I'm going to die if I don't eat something. Something greasy and full of fat. Ha 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 ha. Well, it seems like I don't need to teach you the hangover cure. Sadly, we only have a few hours left to train Naruto. His tone then shifted to a serious one. Starting tomorrow you are on your own. Naruto nodded. Despite blanking on what he assumed was a life-changing night, he felt a little sullen. The training had felt like it had taken a lifetime, but now that it was almost over he felt hollow inside. Without any doubt he had grown, but there was still so much he was uncertain about. What he would do from now on or where he would go. The two traveled swiftly towards their training spot. On the stump was a bird cage, the same one from their first day. Noriyuki placed his jacket and hat on the adjacent stump and rolled up his sleeves. It was strange for him to do something that dirtied his suit. He liked appearing like he had just bought them. As if they were brand new clothes he didn't want to ruin. All fresh and pristine. Okay, today is your final test. We will be going over the 4 areas I covered on the first day. Chakra control, your mind, your spirit, and finally your body. We will proceed in that order. Do you understand? Naruto nodded. He was familiar with his sensei going everything in steps. It was training that he preferred. Good. The first thing I want you to do is make a Rasengan. Okay, that's easy. He put his hands in the seal to make a clone. Noriyuki grabbed his hands before he could summon it. Without your clones, Naruto. Focus on your breathing and draw the chakra to your palm. Naruto wasn't too certain about this. The Rasengan was difficult enough with him and a clone. He would try though. He extended his palm. His breathing was calm. The chakra flowed through his right arm to his palm. He could feel the difference. His chakra seemed more calm than it had been before. Like he didn't have to try as hard. In a few moments the Rasengan formed on his palm. So those meditation exercises did help with my chakra control, Naruto acknowledged. They did, but it's more fundamental than that. These past 3 weeks we trained your mind and spirit. Additionally, you read books that broaden your thinking and have done things that exposed you to different experiences. In doing so your yin half increased exponentially. This brought it more into balance with your predominantly stronger yang half. Balance between my yin and yang. That helps chakra control. Naruto never heard of this. It was primarily just exercises that had you use a set amount of it. Yes. Yin and yang are like your legs. If one leg is half the length of the other, then you have a harder time running. When both are of equal length and there is balance between the two, you can run at speeds you couldn't before. It's the same with chakra control. That makes sense. I never heard any of my teachers explain it like that before. Noriyuki shrugged. Most just think training your chakra and improving control means strengthening them both, like the two are mutually exclusive. There are not. All 3 parts, mind, spirit, and body, are separate and distinct. They build the columns that support the whole. Naruto dispersed his Rasengan. It was nice not having to waste chakra making a clone. It just meant that he could save that energy for other techniques. He tightened his fist. He would be ready the next time he encountered an enemy and would take his lessons with Noriyuki to heart. Now on to the mind. I want you to do 1 round of meditation while I set up the test. Sitting on the grass he clasped his hand together. His mind took him to Ichiraku Ramen. It was much clearer now. His senses were more distinct to every little detail of the shop. Nearly 100,000 hours of meditation definitely made the most significant change in him. It was like when he was here he could shut the outside world away. All his worries seemed to detach from him the longer he spent eating ramen here, and when he returned the world outside it seemed more in focus. Okay, open your eyes, Naruto. You already know the drill for the bird test. Naruto shot open his eyes as his sensei pulled the black cloth from the bird's cage. He could see it clearly. Like a rhythmic pattern. 1, 2, 3, 4, he counted in his mind. This time the bird was brown, not red like the last one. 17, 18, 19. It was definitely smaller too, probably just a baby or a lot younger. 34, 35, 36. He wondered what happened to the other one. He tried to think back over the last few weeks. Did Sensei eat it? 65, 66, 67. No, he probably just let it go or turned it into a messenger or something. He wouldn't have eaten it. Unless he was dared by someone. 89, 90, 91. He would do it if it was a dare. Raw too. His sensei had that stupid game that showed just how shameless he was. That poor innocent bird. 104, 105, 106. He really didn't get his sensei's whole thing about using animals for training. He had already used 2 defenseless animals that he knew of for his training. The decimated rabbit and now this missing bird. 132, 133, 134. God, how long was this going to take? It felt like it had been longer than 10 seconds. He kept counting though, while thinking about how he was going to release this bird when his sensei wasn't looking. He stopped counting right up until the black cloth dropped over the cage. Time. Noriyuki called. How many did you get? 173. Correct. It seems like your mind has grown sharper. Keep your meditation up and your ability to concentrate and perceive things will become sharper. Remember, it's a lifelong discipline. Naruto already knew he had grown in this area. His body had been proof of that. It was difficult seeing the world move slower when he moved at the same rate as it did. At times he felt like he had more time with his own thoughts. An issue that he hadn't been worried about before this training. He was happy that this test proved it though. He understood why his sensei set benchmarks now. It took all the guessing out. Let me ask you something, Naruto. How do you feel right now? He blinked. It was kinda out of the blue, but it was an easy question to answer. Calm, relaxed, I guess. I don't feel any different than I normally do. Naruto saw the devious smirk on his sensei's face to know something was up. What did you do? Noriyuki nudged his head to the side. Go look in the stream and see for yourself. He wasn't sure what to expect at such a request, but whatever expectations Naruto did have were blown away. Instead of his blue eyes and now whiskerless face, he could see red eyes and his distinct facial marks returned. He held up his palm. The red miasma of the Nine-Tails chakra was surrounding it. He created a shadow clone to get the full measure of himself. He was right. The Nine-Tails chakra surrounded him. 2 distinct tails forming at his lower back. How? I don't understand. I don't feel angry, upset, or frustrated. Yes, your spirit has become stronger. You've become tempered from your strong feeling of gratitude. The raging emotions that the Nine-Tails chakra was enveloping you with has been suppressed by it. It has formed the hilt of the blade which you will battle against its will. Forge and harness it to become even stronger, and when the seal finally does break, you'll be able to cut it down. His sensei's determination filled Naruto with excitement. He now had the means to control the Nine-Tails chakra. It was an amazing feeling. This burden that weighed him down like a ball and chain now felt a lot lighter. He wasn't too sure about eventually battling it, but when the time finally came for that battle he would be ready. He wouldn't let it define him anymore. Now for your body. I need to turn off the beast's chakra and undo the resistance seals. It's finally time to pass on to you my greatest technique. Finally. He had been tired of these resistance seals. He got that they helped him become stronger, but he was getting impatient about seeing how much of a difference they actually made. Before you get too excited, I need to focus, Naruto. If you can get this technique you may surpass even me someday. Naruto's eyes widened at such a bold claim. Really? Even you? Yes, but I need you to follow my instructions, otherwise this may wind up hurting you instead. This technique is a trump card. One that will set you apart from other shinobi. The first thing I need you to do is take a deep breath. As big as you can make it. You bet. He let out a small breath before taking a big one in. Good, just hold it. Noriyuki placed both his palms on his chest. First, I'm going to manipulate your chakra to mix with the air in your lungs. Make sure to hold your breath. Naruto nearly gagged on the air as he felt something swirling inside his chest. He couldn't really describe it other than a vague sense of drowning. The air in his lungs felt like it was turning into water. Now I want you to flex all your muscles, make them as tight as you can. Naruto nodded through the discomfort. His muscles contracted as he was near his breaking point to release his breath. Finally, I want you to push the chakra from your lungs throughout your body. Release only a little bit of your breath when you do it. Raw. Noriyuki let go as Naruto forced that fluid-like substance throughout his whole body. He could feel his body become much warmer, a lot warmer, in fact. His heart was beating much faster as well. His muscles felt less restricted than before yet had the same toughness from keeping them flexed. It was a strange sensation. Hard to describe, but he knew it made him feel powerful. Good. You have done it, Naruto. Go look in the stream again and see for yourself. His reflection once more shocked him. Once more there was a faint nostalgia to his appearance. His eyes were white, his skin had a pinkish tint to it. His veins were popping in his forehead and neck. He had seen something like this before. It was like Lee's 8 inner gates. The aura around him looked yellow though instead of green. Was this different or the same thing? He wasn't sure. Naruto, I want you to sprint to that tree. Like you did the first day. Keep your taijutsu stance up and strike the tree when you reach it, Noriyuki ordered. Saving his question until later. He kept his arms up in his guard positions. With a single step kicking off the ground, he found himself in front of the tree a mere moment later. A stark contrast to before. Had this been a week ago, even then he may have not been able to fully perceive the distance in time and would have run head first into it. Just like his sensei had said, everything he had done had been connected in ways he never understood. If he couldn't perceive the world while moving at such incredible speeds, then it would have been pointless. With immense speed and the ability to concentrate on during those times, he could fight enemies he couldn't before. Together they brought balance. Kiya. With a piercing jab, the tree had turned to splinters from his strike. While the tree may have been decimated, Naruto could feel the strain on his arm as his muscles hardened and flexed to unnatural levels. Good, now release your breath slowly and draw back your chakra. As the tension released from his body, he found himself panicking. There was throbbing in his limbs. After he released his breath, he struggled to take a full one in. It was like his chest was constricted. His body was shaking. He couldn't stand without risking falling over. Just relax and breathe slowly. Your body is still adjusting to the shift. Not bad though for your first time, Noriyuki said. Naruto stared at his sensei like he hadn't before. A stare filled with burning scrutiny. For the first time he was really starting to question just who he was learning from. This was ridiculous even for him. To know all these powerful techniques, to do things no others could, and to be a complete mystery was off-putting for him. At least Pervy Sage had a title that people could relate him to. It didn't seem like anyone knew who his sensei was except for a public nuisance in an expensive suit. It was something he always seemed to brush off whenever it came up. Sensei, who are you? I mean, who are you really? Someone like you, who no one seems to know about. Me. Noriyuki shrugged, taking a seat next to him. He looked up at the clouds. Just taking everything in. I'm just a career criminal and a master thief. I have never cared about titles like Hashirama did. For me, a Mani Monty is its own reward and the best title I could have. It's allowed me to remain free to do as I wish without having to worry about nosy individuals getting into my business. You'll find the strongest in this world, Naruto, don't have fancy titles. Like me, it's because they want it that way. Naruto frowned. Yeah, I get that, but you were a ninja once, right? You must have been someone before you left it all behind. Well, you're not wrong. I was a ninja. Once, he said, wistfully. Ha! You'll get a kick out of this. I was once in consideration to be the Kage of my village. Naruto froze. A knot caught in his throat at this knowledge. You were almost a Kage? When? It was a different time. A different life. He sighed. Anyway, I need to explain to you the technique I just taught you. A little upset that his sensei was trying to change the subject again, Naruto could only sigh as well. He wasn't wrong, this was an important technique he needed to know about. I assumed from my appearance it was the 8 inner gates, Naruto surmised. Noriyuki shook his head. You're wrong but not far off. Pound for pound this technique isn't as strong as the 8 inner gates. This is the culmination of the power of breathing. Drawing on the oxygen in the air and infusing it with chakra to fuel the body like a giant lung. It oxygenates the blood and increases blood flow dramatically. The muscles and blood vessels are layered with wind chakra, strengthening them while keeping their flexibility elastic for tremendous force. Yeah, I noticed. I felt super strong. It does make the user stronger, but it also places a significant strain on the user's body, as you have noticed. It is essentially a more powerful version of doping. With a more crucial downside being that it can reduce the user's lifespan if used too frequently. So that's why it's like the inner gates. I'm guessing this is a forbidden technique then. You would think that to be the case. The 8 inner gates open up the largest natural chakra points along the user's body, giving them more power than they could rightfully control. However, as this relies only on wind chakra and not adjusting the body's chakra mechanisms, the more you master wind chakra the less strain you will face as a result. You could even use jutsu while in this state. So there are trade-offs. What's this technique called then? Noriyuki stood up. He held out 7 fingers. It's called the 7 heavenly breaths. 7 heavenly breaths? One less than the inner gates. Yes. Unlike the inner gates, this technique will not kill the user unless they abuse its power too frequently. Only with the promise of death does the 8 inner gates imbue the user with the strength of a god. The 7 heavenly breaths allows the user to fly close to death while still binding them to the laws of nature that govern this earth. Don't be fooled by the number though, it has the power to rival it. Naruto didn't really understand it. It was like the 8 inner gates but less powerful. It was also less risky if he mastered it, and he could still use jutsu. He smiled to himself. With the Raisin Shield and now these heavenly breaths, he would have to challenge both Lee and Neji to compare techniques. He was excited about the prospect. Once you have rested, I'll have you practice activating it on your own. I'll tell you the names of each breath and how you can limit the side effects of the technique over time. We'll also cover some sparring while they're activated to help you adjust to the speed. Purely taijutsu though. Naruto pushed up to his feet, taking in a deep breath. He would master this no matter what. Ha! I see, that's why you took off your jacket and rolled up your sleeves. I'm guessing no transformation this time. Good. I'm ready when you are, sensei. The fire burned brightly as it hissed and cracked from his wife's prodding. The wood had been overturned slightly. It wasn't that big of an issue for him. The fire was warm. But she had always been fickle and things always had to be just right. He couldn't complain though. Without her he had felt like half a man at times. At other times he felt that he had sacrificed too much time with his job to spend time with her. He could imagine she was the same with her work as the head of the medical corps shinobi, but she always spared time for others. They had been married for over 30 years. Yet when she left him, it pained him to realize that he couldn't think of a time they had sat together like this, talking about something other than the Leaf Village. Just enjoying each other's company. What's wrong, Hiruzen? She asked. Her tone always had this mixture of concern and sternness. When you ran a hospital, every question seemed to have that mixture of caring and urgency. He scratched his left arm. Oh, nothing. I just wish I had my pipe with me. I swear. It's because of you that Asuma and Azumi both took up smoking, she scolded. He raised an eyebrow at such an unreasonable claim. Azumi never smoked. Especially not before she got pregnant with Kano Amaru. I know she never did during her time in the Umbu. She shook her head. I caught her smoking when she was still a genin. It was with some boy she met from the academy. I told you about it but you laughed it off like it wasn't a big deal. Did you? He scratched his left arm again. He was trying to recall the event. I don't remember. Was this before or after Asuma and her got into that fight during the feudal lord's visit? He swore those two were such cats and dogs. Azumi was high maintenance like her mother. It's no wonder she and Asuma never got along until she settled down and had Kano Amaru. They had certainly named her right. Biawao rubbed her temples. Don't remind me of that either. Those two were always quite the handful. Especially that time we took that trip to the capital. Trip to the capital? When? It was when she paused, frowning slightly. Actually I think it was just the three of us. You were discussing foreign matters with the leader of the Mizukage in the land of hot water. Hiruzen ears shot up at that. Oh yes, I remember now. You told me after you got back to postpone their missions because they were grounded. Ah ha 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 ha. They never misbehaved after that, did they? She sighed, completely exasperated by his attitude. You're missing the point, Hiruzen. I'm sorry, Biawao-chan. I promise to make it up to you. She folded her arms. Oh really? Kind of late on that, aren't we? Being dead puts a damper on things, doesn't it? Hiruzen scratched his arm again, much harder than before. Don't be like that, Biawao. We have all eternity to be together. This time it will be only for you. He gave her a surreptitious wink. One they shared when they wanted privacy and too many eyes and ears were around. Really, Hiruzen-kun? You're still that perverted monkey when you were a boy. She turned her head but Hiruzen knew she was only doing it to hide her blush. She was distinctly sensitive and cute when they were intimate. Ha ha. Only with you, my love, he co-ed. He was about to reach out to her when he felt a jolt in his arms. She turned towards him, looking directly at them. They have been bothering you more recently, haven't they? Hiruzen nodded. He grunted as he rubbed them. Can't you use healing jutsu? Or something to kill the pain? Sorry, it doesn't work like that here. No real body means no jutsu. Darn. No tobacco and this damage. If you weren't here, Biawao-chan, I would swear I was in hell. You are such a baby, Hiruzen. Come here and let me take a look. He scooted over to her side of the log. He turned, holding out both his arms. She grasped them gently. Her hands seemed to soothe their pain. He noted a small frown on her face as she traced her hands on them. I see. So that's why. It makes sense now, she mumbled. What is it? What makes sense? She looked him in the eyes. Hiruzen didn't understand as she gave him a gentle smile. Like she was going to tell him something he wouldn't like. You know, Hiruzen, I'm not going anywhere. I'll wait for you no matter how long it takes. Hiruzen blinked. Biawao-chan? I don't under-air. He grunted as his arms started to spasm. A faint green glow was emanating from them. Slowly they began to spread up to his shoulders. Biawao had let go of him. He tried to reach out for her but she pushed his arms aside. She shook her head. It's okay, Hiruzen. I'm grateful for this time. Our eternity will have to wait. Before he could do anything else, she cupped his cheeks, leaning in to kiss him. He couldn't feel anything as she was already fading away. Biawao! He shouted into the black void. The fire, the log, and most importantly his wife were gone. It was just darkness. No, it was more than that. He could hear something. Something faint. Beep, 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 beep. It was becoming louder. More pronounced. It sounded vaguely familiar. He needed to listen more closely. Asterisk beep. 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 Beep, asterisk. Isn't that the sound of a respirator? He had been in a hospital enough times to know what it was. The question was why he was hearing it now. Ugh. He moaned. His arms were killing him. The pain was becoming more intense by the second. They were throbbing like they had just been set on fire. An uncomfortable experience he was all too familiar with. Why though? Why did they feel this way? Where was Biawao? Where was he now? Oh my god. Lord Third, are you awake? A voice. Hiruzen didn't recognize it. All he saw was darkness. He didn't know what was happening, but he needed someone to help him. Forcing all his effort, he made another grunt. Ugh. Yes. Someone get Lady Hokage right now. Let her know that Lord Third has woken up. Woken up? Hiruzen thought, confused. He thought he had been dead. It had never occurred to him that he had been asleep. All he hoped at that moment was that Biawao was still there. Right now he didn't know what was happening, and without a doubt he knew he would rather be with her. Naruto gasped as his aching muscles submerged into the hot spring. Oh my god. Nothing beats a soak after some intense training. He let out a massive sigh into the fresh evening air. The training was tougher than he thought. Even using the heavenly breaths, it seemed like his sensei broke a sweat. Every punch was either blocked or dodged. At least he did better than the spar yesterday. They definitely gave him an edge in taijutsu. 3 goddamn weeks. What the hell is wrong with that restaurant? His sensei yelled out, killing Naruto's sense of serenity like a knife to an electrical outfit. Seriously, sensei? Are you still on that? It's a wooden toy. Can't you just let it go? For the last week it had been like this. That family restaurant they went to every day had given him 4 out of the 5 toys he needed to complete the set. For reasons Naruto didn't understand, they were out of stock or none were sent to this land or something beyond their control. That didn't stop his sensei from bitching about it. Remember criminal rule number 5, if you want something, never stop until you get it. So there's no chance in hell I'm giving up. Can't you just go somewhere else to get one? Their promotion ends in a week, so I won't be here. Oh man. Just wait until their head office gets the strongly worded letter I'm going to send them. Victory, and that fish toy shall be mine. Yeah, whatever you say, sensei, Naruto mumbled, blowing bubbles in the water. His sensei would rant for a bit, then calm down. Nothing he wasn't already used to. The two eventually sat in silence. Naruto was still contemplating tomorrow. By morning he would be on his own. No support or help was on his way. It would just be him. Even after the last 20 days he still didn't feel like it was enough. He would admit that his sensei's training had met his claim. He had grown to a point where he wouldn't have recognized himself a month ago. Everything about him was different. But it still wasn't enough. He needed one more thing. Something he had asked his sensei a week ago. Something he would need to know right now. Sensei. About that favor I asked you. Have you decided yet? Naruto's jaw clenched. He knew what he was asking was a lot, and it went against his agreement with Noriyuki, but it was something he wanted to do. Something he had to do. Yes, I have. Naruto stood up. Anticipation filled him. I'll agree on one condition. Naruto resisted the urge to yell out with joy. He had said yes. This was going to be amazing. This would most likely be the greatest mission he had done so far. Naruto nodded. Of course, whatever it is, I'll do it. His piercing green eyes almost glowed as he stared at Naruto, leveling him with a cool gaze. You may come along with me on this job tonight as an observer only. You are not allowed to do anything other than to watch and learn. Am I understood? There was a finality in his tone. No room to negotiate. That sounds perfect. I was surprised by your request, to be honest. I thought you would want an active part in it. Naruto shook his head. After all your lessons, I realized that you only showed me the skills and the mindset to have for surviving day to day. You never showed me how to handle big jobs. So I wanted to see firsthand how a true master gets things done. Ha ha ha. Well, you've certainly learned flattery well. You're right though. Maybe getting a true sense of scale will finally open your eyes. He stood up, walking over to Naruto. Noriyuki's gaze never left his own for a single moment. Naruto resisted the urge to look away as to not appear weak by his presence. He needed to show strength now. Be warned, Naruto. After tonight you may never see this world the same way again. Chapter 9, Scope of Success. It was a little past midnight when the two of them checked out of the hotel. The moon was covered by the abundant clouds. Tonight would be dark. The perfect night for whatever heist his sensei had planned. From all the build-up his sensei had put into its importance, Naruto could only imagine what they would be going after. For the last hour though they had been waiting at the docks. Apparently there was a ship coming with someone important to the job. Naruto had asked Noriyuki who this person was. All he said was that the guy was an important person to him. It made Naruto curious that he would refer to someone like that. His tone carried that importance, so Naruto was interested in meeting him. It would be a little while until his boat got here though, so it was during this period that Noriyuki ran through his tactics for running a big job like the one they were about to do. Primarily all jobs, schemes, and schemes are based within the locus of control. Locus of control? What does that mean? Noriyuki took out a piece of paper and a marker from his inner coat pocket. He laid them out on a crate laid in front of them on the pier, adjusting the lantern that hung on a wooden post next to them so Naruto could see. He started by drawing a circle. The locus of control, or as I sometimes call it, the circle of control, means everything that is known to you. This means everything pertaining to your objective, both internally and externally, that you can control. Noriyuki drew 5 characters on the sheet inside the circle. To make things simple, let's keep to the bare basics: who, what, where, when, and why. These 5 areas are the fundamentals of completing your task. Whether your solution be complex or simple in most cases, they can help organize all your information without getting too bogged down on details. Naruto scratched his head. He wasn't too sure what his sensei was trying to get at. Typically when doing a mission it was too risky just to base your success on things you could control when anything could happen to mess them up. He had been on several missions where pre-planning didn't help him as much because of how unpredictable or strong the enemy actually was. That's why he believed planning things out was as good as just winging things was. Being spontaneous usually paid off for him, in most cases. Maybe it's best if I give an example then. Say you were after an object. Something valuable. This would be considered the what. This includes things like, what the object is, what it does, what it could do, what it can't do, etc. He marked down these things next to it on the paper. The who would be the people invested in that object. Who's protecting it? Who has access to the object? Who owns it? Who will notice if it's missing? This is crucial as it will be these people blocking you from your goal. Are you with me so far? Naruto nodded. He would hold off his concerns until after. His sensei always explained things differently than, well, just about every one of his teachers. He seemed to have insights that always seemed deeper than what they usually tried to explain. The where is also just as important as the who. Where is the object located? Where are the enemies guarding it? Where is it easier to access it? This ties in well with the 4th area, when. When is the object being moved? When are the guards' shift changes? When do they do patrols? When do they do this? When do they do that? Very typical questions. Between these 4 areas you can formulate plans that could lead you to success in just about any mission. Naruto looked at the page. He tapped the last section. I'm guessing the why is the most important. Correct. It's the one area most people tend to forget. It's another one of the great weaknesses shinobi hold. The reason they tend to be so short-sighted in their mission planning. He wrote out one question in the circle. This one was much bigger and circled. Why are people willing to fight for this object? He let out a gruff sigh. Too many fail to realize why some things are so important to other people that they will go to lengths they couldn't fathom until it's too late. They are so impersonal and task-oriented that they don't truly understand how their enemies think and why they think them. Both good and bad. I get all this, sensei, but this all doesn't necessarily mean all the plans using this will work. You even once said that even if I have the information there is a big gap between knowing it and it actually being true. He had said this during one of the challenges. It nearly cost Naruto a hand, but the message sunk in. You're right. Not all the information you have will be accurate. But that isn't the point. Naruto tilted his head. It's not? Then what's the point of all this? None of this has anything to do about planning. You could come up with 1,000 different plans and be that many steps ahead of your adversaries, but that isn't enough. Simply planning to get around obstacles is the practice of the average and mediocre. You need to go beyond what others do. This is about control and nothing but. Naruto shifted in his spot. He was really trying to grasp this. You called this the locus of control, right? How is it any different than just regular planning then? It seems like it's the same to me. Think of it like this. You may know where the object you seek is, but it's in a heavily guarded spot. However, you know how to get around the defenses, but it would require a lot of sacrifice to do so. How do you proceed? Naruto pursed his lips. This was a common question he would get asked. Typically he could get by on coming up with a simple solution. Simple solutions were typically overlooked according to Noriyuki. However, if there was already a solution in place, it meant that it most likely wasn't what his sensei wanted to hear. Naruto was rapping his knuckles into the side of his head to figure out a solution. Naruto sagged. I guess I would just try and minimize how much I lose. Sorry, I haven't a clue. Noriyuki patted his shoulder. Don't feel too bad. This is what separates the masters and the students. You're making and following a plan based on where the object is. A lot of shinobi do that. I would say more than 90% do. Instead of doing that, you need to harness the other 4 aspects and control where the object will be instead. Control where it will be? How would I do that? Noriyuki's vicious smirk came out. As I just said. Use the other 4 aspects. So for this example, I know that the owner of the object is quite paranoid and will go to extreme lengths to protect it. Instead of wasting resources breaking in, I tip him off that I know how to get past his security, forcing him to move the object to keep it safe. Naruto's brows furrowed. He didn't think of something like that. It was clever and sneaky, but it wasn't a guarantee. A point even clear for him. Yeah, but what if he doesn't move it and decides to increase the number of guards instead? It puts them on alert. That just makes things harder. He had thought his assessment would make Noriyuki's plan falter. Unsurprisingly, that only made his grin widen even further. Yes, it could. That is also an option for him. He may require more security or decide to make other changes to reinforce it. But, to do so would require him to also create potential gaps in his new security. Posing as a new guard, knowing who is adding to the security, or just making use of the chaos it creates will make changes and vulnerabilities that weren't there before. By controlling his fears, I have forced him to waste time and resources that would culminate in his eventual failure. You're saying that by making his security more complex you have made it more vulnerable, Naruto surmised. Just like in that book you read about the Master Builder and his Iron Golem. The book wasn't something Naruto would call kid-friendly. The builder in it was crazy. He wanted to hide all his inventions from the world when they could have saved lives. To stop people from stealing them, he created an invincible golem made of iron to stop anyone from taking them. The hero managed to trick the inventory by making him think he had managed to sneak by the golem. So the inventor, seeing his golem wasn't enough, he decided to make an iron gate as well. But like his sensei had done with his exploding clones down in the prison ruins, the hero did the same to the iron gate. It wound up crushing both the golem and the builder. Yes. While gathering as much information as possible is still fundamental, it's only a half measure. The ultimate lesson here, Naruto, is that I never make plans that force me to act around someone else's designs or strategies. I control the elements around what I desire to fit into my plan. One that is less likely to be countered or stopped. That is the secret of strategy to succeed in life. In Noriyuki's weird way, he had got Naruto to come around to his thinking. It was certainly complex. Definitely more complex than what Naruto had been expecting. But its reasoning resonated with him. It was different. It was more than just thinking ahead or stopping to formulate a plan. It was deeper than that. It was being able to understand others and how they react. How they feel. Why they feel the way they do. Understanding others, Naruto pondered. His sensei had mentioned that when he had given him the books. Over the past 3 weeks he still didn't understand this hidden ability the Nine Tails gave him to sense negative emotions. While his sensei had said it wasn't something he could force, there was still an underlying truth to its purpose. For a long time he had wanted to connect with others. Or hopefully make a deep, meaningful one someday. While it was always hard to do so given his past, that hope had started to burgeon from the friends he had gathered since becoming a ninja. Now necessity was becoming his reason. To not only survive but to someday thrive. As grating as that was. All he could do was hold out hope his primary reason would still be there was things settled. I understand, sensei. My only issue is that it seems too crazy to be able to have such control without things going sideways. He managed a dry laugh. Thoughts of those sideways moments always made him glad he made it through them. It seemed like half my missions threw some sucker punch at me. It takes practice and experience to have control over everything inside the circle. This is all stuff inside the circle? What's on the outside of it then? Noriyuki gave a half-hearted shrug. As you said. Just about anything that delivers that sucker punch. The things you can't control and probably never will. And how do when something like that happens? That seems like it would be more useful to know, believe it. Ha 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 ha. While I have no words of wisdom or any insightful knowledge to pass on, I do have one thing to say. His eyes took on a mad glint. His teeth glowed against the lamp's flickering fire. When you step outside the circle, anything goes. The fourth Hokage, sat at his desk drumming his fingers into the side of his head. He was nursing a massive headache. Having to stay up this late in the night for work was a bit excessive in his opinion. Not that he would ever get tired from such a thing. It was easy for him to find some of this tedious nonsense to be a bit excessive. Clearly some matters could wait until morning. For him, at least, anyway. I want you to double the amount of shinobi. I don't care about the cost. I want it done now. The client yelled right as he barged in. Normally he would have hoisted anyone who talked to him so rudely like this by their ankles and held them over his mountainside balcony until they learned some manners. Sadly this option wasn't available to him. He doubted the feudal lord would appreciate doing such a thing to his younger brother. The only real reason he could sympathize with the feudal lord with this was because he too was protective of his own annoying brother. Have no fear, Lord Sekun. The forces I have in place are plenty. No one will be able to take your cargo. I promise you that, he declared strongly. He never liked dealing with civilians, especially politicians. They never seemed to understand that they needed to stay in their own lane. Shinobi matters were just that. He was paying for professional protection. That's what he was getting, and you never needed to tell a professional what to do. They just did it. His words clearly didn't seem to put him at ease. He slammed his heavily ornamental walking stick on the ground. The thing looked ridiculous. It certainly lacked function, with it probably being too heavy. The Lord definitely enjoyed a more sedentary lifestyle. A gold-silver lacquered high hat with matching satin robes, gemstone rings on each finger, half a dozen pendants and necklaces. The man was like a walking jewelry store. A grossly stark contrast to his more modest and hard-working brother. That too was similar with him and his own brother. Yes, I know, you imbecile. They're taking the western route on the Chijiri Sea. You have 15 different shinobi between 3 patrol ships, 6 are Jonin and the rest are Chunin. The ninja leading these teams is your personal attendant, Dode. I'm telling you, it's not enough. There are thieves who already know this information. Ai's eyes widened slightly as he rose from his seat. How do you know this? He was a little stunned that this secret information was said so abruptly. Missions like this were routine, but just because something was done often it didn't mean there was any less risk. If this information was leaked, then the loss would be great. The Lord slammed a folder down on his desk. One of my men caught a thief trying to steal this information from my residence. Unfortunately the rat got away, but not before pilfering through these files. I flipped through the papers. His teeth grinned at this blatant security breach. While he doubted some common thief could make any difference in taking the Lord's cargo, it didn't mean he couldn't sell or give the information to someone who could. The land of water was in a state of conflict right now. Some opportunists may take this chance to break out on their own. How long ago was this? A week ago. Why didn't you tell me this before? I could have gotten word to my people and changed the route. I was away on matters outside the country. I only found out from my attendant this afternoon. I grunted. I understand. I'll send a backup team to rendezvous along their path. Hopefully nothing has happened yet. See. Darui. Get in here. Both of his bodyguards entered the room. They knelt before the two of them. They looked alert and ready. A good indication to leave things to them. Yes, my lord. See, I want you to take Team 34 and set out to rendezvous with Dode's group. Their mission has been compromised. Make haste. At once, my lord, he responded, flickering out of the room. Darui. I want you to secure Lord Sikuin's estate. Figure out how they were able to get past the guards I had protecting it. Roger, the white-haired man, responded dully, scratching the back of his head. He stood up and walked to the door. I sighed at his subordinate. He was glad he had the courtesy to bow with a noble present. Normally he didn't care for that crap. Unsurprisingly, his uninterested attitude really didn't seem to ingratiate him with the Lord Sikuin, who glared as he softly clicked the door behind him. Raikage, I don't want your regular ninja on this matter. That cargo is too important. I want the Jinchura key to handle it as well. I want there to be no doubts that it will reach the Land of Lightning. I paused, taking in the request. He wanted to slam his fist down on this pompous fool's head so badly. It would be so easy to beat this slug into a fine paste. He grit his teeth. Sadly, both Yujito and B are on missions right now for the feudal lord. He leveled a glare to the noble. Have no doubts. C and Darui will get it done. The lord huffed, insulted by his unruly tone. They better, or there will be hell to pay. He turned to leave. He only paused as I asked him one last question. You never told me what this cargo is. The noble barely turned his head as he said, it's a resource that will help sustain our land's superior economy. Not that I would expect you to understand. Good day, Raikage. I frowned. A resource that will keep our economy strong. He had no idea what Sikuin had referred to. The Land of Lightning's economy was the strongest of the 5 great nations. If there was such a resource that was responsible for it, then he would find out what. It was shortly after Noriyuki-sensei's prompt lessons on strategy that their waiting came to an end. A large boat pulled into the dock. It was much larger than the small to medium-size fishing boats that filled the piers. In fact, it was probably the biggest boat he had ever seen. The thing had a metal spire-like tower on the stern and rows of cannons on its sides. On board were large Red Sea containers that covered the middle of the ship, leaving the bow empty. Whoever owned this ship most likely had money to spare. Oh, Captain! My Captain! A loud, boisterous voice shouted from the top of the gangplank. Naruto saw a man wearing a floral pattern t-shirt and beige shorts. He was tall and lanky, his hair was black with some gray on the sides, and he had a noticeable stubble. He looked a little older than Noriyuki. In his hands he had 2 martini glasses. Skipping down the plank, he handed one of the glasses to Noriyuki. Noriyuki shook his head. Ha ha ha. I see you're starting the celebration early. Clink. Just getting a head start. You all can catch up later. I'll drink to that. Naruto watched on as his sensei drank with what he could only guess to be his twin in every way but appearance. Noriyuki had said they were meeting a member of his family. Noriyuki used the term loosely. Family being his closest associates, not actual blood relatives. Naruto had thought he would dress more or less like he was now, or something close to Hirute's formal robes at least. This guy looked like he was on vacation. Noriyuki waved him over. Naruto, come meet the man who dared challenge the notion that you couldn't make a spirit so dry it caused dehydration. Said man raised his glass to him. The trick is to add the right amount of seawater. The rest is just adding berumato distilled from the most petrified tree bark you can find. Naruto had sampled different drinks over the past 3 weeks. He was familiar with this particular brand of spirit. The closest comparison at the time had been water that had somehow been spoiled by umbashi fruit. When he mentioned that Noriyuki had congratulated him on guessing it right, he wasn't sure if he was joking or not. Hello, young sir. The man stuck out his hand to Naruto. I don't know a thing about you other than that I can see our beloved leader has thrown up all over you. Naruto hastily took his hand. Thrown up all over me? That's right. He's spewed his wardrobe on you from head to toe. That stuff doesn't wash out. Huh. The only thing washed out is your terrible jokes, Takame. Noriyuki came up and put his arm around the guy's shoulder. He may be a terrible comedian, but this man here is the best doctor you'll ever meet. Whenever there's a crisis, he's always smiling, unperturbed by the chaos. Whenever there's a nurse picking something up on the ground, he's right behind her to give his unwavering support. Whenever there is an open bar, he tests the limits of what can be biologically consumed. A doctor who never lets the dying shake his indomitable spirits. The man. The legend. Takame Tsukasaju. Oh, stop. No need for any accolades. I'm just doing my Hippocratic commitment to things I lost my license for. It takes a real legend to sleep with a nurse and a patient all in the same bed. All while on duty, I'm guessing. Would I disgrace this sacred uniform? He said, referencing his current attire. I see your malpractice still has dulled your sense of Fashion. If Fashion could help cure patients, I would have the best looking sick people around. Naruto buried his face in his hands. There's two of them now, Naruto mentally groaned. It was worse now with this guy because everything he said sounded like he took nothing seriously. He got enough of that from Noriyuki. Noriyuki cleared his throat. So anyway. I have to ask Dr. Style. You're late. It's not because you were drinking and sailing, was it? Takame's jaw dropped, seemingly insulted. What do you think I am? Crazy? You know I never sail with more than 3 drinks in me. For your information, smart mouth, there were more guards than anticipated. One of them even made a life raft out of rubber with his jutsu. Shame a giant wave drifted them away, coincidentally of course. Interest. Quite the rare use of lava style. We may have to look him up later to make some odds and ends. Careful, Takame. Naruto here just became a man last night. From what I overheard outside the bedroom window, it was rather romantic. Acted like a real gentleman too. So he doesn't want to hear what's odd about those ends. Takame's face lit up like a bulb. He beamed a smile. Oh really? Congratulations, kid. We need more men in the world. Too many have lost their testicles to the scourge of their wives' purses. Naruto was hunched over now. His palmed face now buried into his knees. He wasn't sure he could take much more of this. Can we get on with this, please? He muffly asked. This was too grating for his mental state. Noriyuki sighed. Sadly, we have to get this show on the road. Shall we? Yes, all aboard the SS. Land of Lightning or bust. The three walked up on board the ship. He had never been on a boat like this before. This thing looked like it could be its own little village. A part of him really wanted to go exploring. Sadly, he was still in the dark about this whole scheme he was to observe, so he had to stay close to Noriyuki. Naruto bumped into his sensei's back suddenly. He stood there still and unmoving. Takame? What's the meaning of this? He bit out. Naruto peered around him to see a man standing before them. He was tall, dressed in black robes. He had a hood down covering most of his face. Naruto could make out a thick white beard. Most likely an older man. Takame rubbed the back of his neck. Listen, I didn't know he snuck aboard. I mean, it's not like I could tell him no. He is involved in this after all. Naruto could see that his sensei was upset. His fists were curled. Shoulders wide. What are you doing here, Kakeru? I told you that your involvement wasn't necessary. We were more than enough to handle this. This Kakeru guy, his sensei seemed so peeved with, stepped forward. Lifting up his hood, he could see the man was older than he thought. His snow-white hair was receding on the front of his head, but it was still long in the back, draping down to his shoulders. He had a bit of a stoic look to him. Wise and intelligent. If he were to guess his age, he would probably be around the same as Old Man Third. The two seemed to have that same vibe. I apologize for such actions, but I couldn't just sit idly as you and your family dealt with this issue on my behalf. The man's voice was firm and had a lot of authority in it. He stepped up to his sensei, looking him straight in the eye. Naruto wasn't sure what was going to happen. The last person who tried to intimidate his sensei like this was buried from the shoulders down. It wasn't necessary. You're too important to risk, Noriyuki muttered softly. I'm sorry. You know I wouldn't trouble you with this if it wasn't important. The old man wrapped his arms around his sensei, which Noriyuki quickly reciprocated. The old man shut his eyes, seemingly engrossed in their embrace. His sensei patted the old man back just as the two broke off their embrace and grasped each other's arms. I know. I'm not mad with you. Just worried. The old man smiled, gripping the hilt of the sword concealed on his hip. Have no fear. I still have my saber with me. It won't come to that. I promise you. His sensei turned to his friend who was filling his glass from a hidden flask. Takame. I expect you'll keep Kakeru safe. Takame raised his glass. Have no fears, boss. I'll protect him like he was my own child. If not, then you can have one of mine. Noriyuki sighed. Naruto, this stowaway here is Kakeru Tsuki. It's for his sake we are partaking in this assignment. He's also the king and ruler of the land of the moon. Naruto blinked. Really? He's a king. Of all the things he thought the old man could have been, a king was the last thing he would have guessed. He thought he was an old friend or his uncle or something along those lines. It was strange that someone like his sensei would be close to an actual king. It was his perspective that Noriyuki wasn't a fan of lords and rulers. The old guy walked up to him holding out his hand. It is a pleasure to meet you, young man. I thank you for helping my people in this most dire of circumstances. A bit bashful to be addressing someone so important, Naruto gingerly took his hand. No sweat. Actually, I have no idea what we're doing here anyway. Noriyuki-sensei never told me. The old man frowned. Noriyuki. He turned back to his sensei who shot them a wink. Naruto didn't understand what it meant. Oh, I see. Well, I guess you should know what's happening then. Luckily we were able to take back what was stolen from my country. What? Naruto walked over to his sensei, pointing an accusing finger. You mean you already completed the mission already? Noriyuki patted his shoulder. Ha 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 ha. Relax, Naruto. Reacquiring the objective isn't the goal for this mission. It was just important to keep them safe. Has the accommodations been made for their transport back home? Kakeru interjected. He looked tense and more than a little uncomfortable. Yes, Noriyuki confirmed. There are 2 ships waiting on the other side of the docks ready to go. I would ask you to go as well, but I'm guessing you're not going to listen, are you? No. It is my duty and responsibility as their king to protect them. I will put a stop to this even if I have to put my life on the line to do it. I will not falter on this or look away. Not even if it's you asking me this. Kakeru's voice was resolute. There was no hesitation or wavering. Naruto couldn't help but smile at the man's resolve. If the king of a nation was like this, then he could see why Noriyuki would be so willing to help him. I swear you're as stubborn as your father. Noriyuki rubbed his eyes. Fine then. We'll see this through together. You'll rendezvous with Takame at the coordinates. My people are already in place to strike. Naruto and I will lead our guests to give everyone room to breathe. Are we all clear on this? Yes. They all replied. It was now that Naruto finally had the chance to ask. Noriyuki had been building up this job for weeks now. More so on how important it was rather than the specifics. Sensei, can you tell me what was so important about this thing you all stole? The 3 men paused. Each giving a silent acknowledgement and nod. I guess you'll find out regardless. Let's get this started. Naruto followed his sensei over to the sea containers. He pulled up the latch, releasing the lock. Naruto, I need you to promise me something. Looking at his sensei, he had already guessed what he wanted to say. A small grin formed on his face. Relax, sensei. I can keep my cool. He hoped it sounded convincing. In the back of his mind he knew what he was about to see would upset him. He was used to it and would try to keep calm and centered to be useful to his sensei. At least I hope I can, he thought bitterly. His sensei looked to his feet. I want to say that I'm glad you're here. To see a glimpse into my world. It was never easy, but as I grew within it I was able to paint that darkness in my own color. No matter how bad things are, so long as you stand up for what you believe in, whether you're a devil or a saint, all that matters is sticking to your own convictions. He looked up, pulling the door open. Naruto had only guessed at what was inside. His own misconceptions on the evil in the world, while pictured too heavily in black and white, knew that they still existed. That there was scum out there that would stoop to depths that made his blood boil. Scum that should be eradicated from this world. Noriyuki's voice cut through the whimpering and crying in the dark container. It's all right. We're here to take you home. Naruto looked onto the huddled mass of women and children. Some bloodied and beaten. Most looked like they hadn't eaten a meal in over a week. Worst of all, he could feel it. Not just see or hear it with his own eyes, but felt it within his heart. He could feel their fear. Naruto turned around, not wanting to show his face to them. I swear to you all. They will pay for this. Here he comes down for fun, shouting out of the run, he's not damn playing, you know what I am Damn it, I just bit my tongue, ya fool. Killer B was facing a conundrum. He had been working for hours on this new anchor rap, but nothing seemed to jump out at him. His inspiration was at an all-time low. He was struggling to finish his latest masterpiece. Deep down he knew he was close though. Please master. Can we stop for a break? I don't think I can go on much longer, whined his young genin student, Omoi. Oh, will you shut up already? Whine. 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 That's all you've done since the mission ended, scolded his more hot-tempered genin student, Kurui. She raised her fist ready to slug the overly cautious boy. Honestly, don't kids today understand the importance of having rhythm? B spun around as he leapt from tree to tree. Quiet down, ya fools. I'm out of the zone, my rhythm's lacking all flavor. You're turning me down with your whack behavior. Yaya. You're one to talk, master. Omoi exclaimed. You can run backwards all day while writing. Kurui and I can barely keep up, and we've been running since early this morning. Speak for yourself, you idiot. I am perfectly fine running for days at a time. Kurui huffed proudly. Omoi gave her an appraising gaze from head to toe. Then stared intently at her chest, resting his fingers on his chin. Now that you mention it, you have grown lately, Kurui. Of course I have. Just you watch, I'll be the strongest jonin in the village someday. No. No, that's not it. I think your boobs are finally starting to come in. His eyes widened in shock. That means you're becoming a woman. That means you'll start noticing boys more, and you may wind up falling in love with one. And since I'm the only guy you're close to, you'll fall in love with me. We'll wind up married in a loveless marriage with 3 kids. Every day you'll slowly suck the life out of me until I die years before my time, leaving you and the kids without me. Smack. Don't be stupid. I don't want your friggin' kids. Who the hell would ever fall for you? B. I need to talk to you. B pursed his lips. Inspiration suddenly struck him. Yeah. Kurui's finally becoming a lady. She ain't no little girl, and she ain't shady. Oh yeah. He jotted down the lines. This was perfect. He could work with this. Just a few more lines of this and my next concert will be full of flavor. Yaya. No. Please, master. Don't sing about that in front of everyone. Kurui cried. Omoi rubbed the lump on his head. I agree, it was bad enough to think about leaving my unborn children alone with her. Kurui reared back her fist, making the paranoid boy flinch back away from her. I'll make you unborn. B watched on with muted concentration as his violent and blooming red-haired student beat the crap out of the overly cautious one. Ideas were forming like a storm. Perhaps I could write an enka about a relationship. Nothing beats a good romance. This would work. Yes, this would work perfectly. B. Are you listening to me? He would just need to somehow sneak this by his brother. After the last concert ended in flames and some minor wanton property damage, he wasn't a team player for his shows. B shivered at the thought of receiving one of his iron claws again. A complete and total inspiration killer if ever there was one. Perhaps he could host one outside the village? No, that wouldn't work. B found that not as many people showed up for some reason if it wasn't playing outside their homes. It was another conundrum for him. It wouldn't deter him though. Rap was food for the soul and he was the number one, undisputed, soul chef. Stop daydreaming and listen, you fool. What? B shifted himself into his mindscape. He sat on top of his partner's head. A partner who looked none too happy at the moment. His massive purple arms folded. Yo. What up, Ado? Don't what up, me. I need to talk to you about something important. Alright, my partner. Speak away, I'll listen to what you have to say. The Eight Tails, Jiyuki, huffed at B's flippant attitude. We need to get back to the village as soon as possible. We do? Why? They had just finished up a mission and were almost to the border of the Land of Frost. It hadn't been too difficult. B mainly just supervised Omoi and Karui as they took on some low-level rogues. It was nice to get out of the village and stretch his legs. So why not take his time? I don't know why, but I sense something nearby. Something powerful. Like what? Jiyuki paused. I don't know. I have this feeling that a storm is coming. B smiled, shrugging off his partner's worries. There ain't no storm so mighty. 'Cause we hail from the cloud and we are the lightning. Ugh. I don't mean a literal storm. Someone powerful is nearby. I haven't felt like this since my encounter with Hashirama Senju. Hashirama's dead, Ado. There's no need to fear the dead, that's enough said. I said it was like Hashirama. This feeling though is worse, much worse. Naruto and his sensei were making their way towards the Land of Lightning. The citizens from Moon Country had been taken to ships waiting to transport them back home. Many were relieved to see their king directing them out of this horrible situation. It was nice to see a ruler care so deeply about his people. It reminded him of the old man third back in the Leaf Village. After they set off, Noriyuki and himself separated from Takame and Keikaru. They would be sailing to a rendezvous point north from Nagaya while he and his sensei flew towards the hidden cloud village. It was a little awkward being carried by his sensei, but he certainly couldn't complain about the view. Being able to fly seemed like a handy ability to have. They were traveling at speeds that would make anyone jealous. In the distance Naruto could make out large mountains. They loomed over the horizon like dark spires. Supposedly the cloud village was located among them. It was difficult to see anything surrounding them due to the abundance of clouds though. Granted, they wouldn't have called their village that if they didn't do just that. Naruto couldn't wait to get there. There was some payback that needed to be dealt. Naruto, you promised to keep your cool. Yeah, I know. He slammed his fist into his palm. It's just I can wait to get the justice they deserve. Justice? Oh? You expect the people involved will be locked up, do you? Well, I guess I thought the scumbags involved were just some no-name pieces of trash that have no consideration for human decency. Naruto nodded at that assessment. Only real scum could be so cruel to kidnap innocent people. Pretty much. Well, you're half right. Hate to burst your bubble, Naruto, but the culprits of this heinous act are the rulers of this country. Naruto's eyes hardened. Wait? You mean, then what's the point then if they're just going to get away with it? Noriyuki huffed, pointing down below to the ground. We're already in the Land of Lightning, so it's best if I explain our role in this operation. They sat down on a hill overlooking a fairly sizable town. There was a large wall surrounding it on all sides. The houses, buildings, and roads were set up into squares, dividing the town into different districts. The largest building, a traditional layered and flared mansion, was in the center. It was several stories tall. Compared to the rest of the town, it was lit up with a ton of lights. Obviously there was something going on in there. So since we can't just dump these idiots on the proper authorities, we have to hurt them where it hurts the most. Noriyuki grinned wolfishly. It will only be worse for them now that Keikaru is here as well. What are we doing then? I don't get anything about this whole mission. This mission was never about rescuing people from kidnappers. Sad is it to say, kidnapping is pretty standard for shinobi villages. The Leaf Village wouldn't do something like this, Naruto argued. He knew the old man or Granny Tsunade would flip if someone in the village did this. Hate to break it to you Naruto, but they have. Noriyuki raised his hand before Naruto could say his piece. But they aren't the worst offenders of this. Every country and ninja village steals to get an advantage over their neighbors. For security purposes or otherwise. Most of the time it's just intel, a certain jutsu or a piece of technology. In rare cases it's people with rare abilities or kekai genkai. For instance, I know the Cloud tried to kidnap some little girl from the Leaf Village a few years ago and almost set off a war. A flash of Hinata's face entered his. He remembered. Neji lost his father because of it. It was why he was so caught up with being trapped in destiny. His promise to change the way of Hyuga when he became Hokage. He may never become Hokage, but he was now realizing that it didn't have to stop him from fulfilling his other promises. He would still help his friends. Just like he would help those kidnapped by these scumbags right now. Naruto's fists clenched. So are we going to kill them then? It was a distasteful thought, but how could you stop a ruler of a nation if they couldn't be punished by a superior? No, we are not. As much as this trash deserves it, what we're going to do is much worse. What's worse than death? Political and bureaucratic hell, Noriyuki stated boldly. Naruto's body sagged. Huh. Ha ha ha. Right now my family is scattered across the country right now. Some of them are collecting documents that link nobles and the Land of Lightning's government to these kidnappings. At the same time we are freeing large groups of slaves from work sites all over the nation. Okay, I get the freeing slaves part, Naruto acknowledged. But what will those documents do if no one can punish them? You may not know this, but Lighting has the strongest economy out of the Big Five thanks to their cheap source of labor. Mainly by having them mine and process special minerals from their mountain ranges. Naruto frowned. So freeing them will hurt their economy? Yes, it will. For the documents I'll be handing them over to Kakeru. That old king guy? What will he do with them? Noriyuki turned to the town, staring off in the distance. While the Land of the Moon may not have the same population or military might as a great nation, its wealth surpasses every other on this continent. That means the amount of influence Kakeru has is enormous. Naruto blinked owlishly. Wow, I had no idea. He had never heard of the Land of the Moon until an hour ago. It never dawned on him that the old man was so influential. Probably should stop calling him old man then. Yes, due to how popular his land is, he has many friends who are feudal lords and rulers of their own nations. Do you know what will happen when he shares this information with them? Noriyuki's question carried a dangerous undertone. Naruto gulped and shook his head. He had a rough idea, but what his sensei was getting at was probably much worse. Let me ask you this, Naruto. If you were a ruler of a country and had to hire foreign shinobi, would you do so from a nation that is known to kidnap foreign citizens? I don't mean people with special abilities or those with key intel either. Just ordinary people. Naruto shook his head violently. Of course not. I wouldn't even want to deal with them. Noriyuki turned to Naruto. His face was ripe with anger. Exactly. What the Land of Lightning has done is so unprecedented it will bury them in their own hubris. Without jobs coming in from other nations, their economy drops like a stone in water. As much as loyalty to one's village is important, it's just words that don't mean anything in the face of a cruel reality. Shinobi villages are still mercenaries. They need money to survive. If ninja aren't getting paid, then they leave or rebel. If their neighbors won't trade with them, then ordinary citizens will suffer. And when those citizens find out that their leaders are responsible for it, then those leaders will face a reckoning. This country won't be able to fucking breathe without someone holding their sorry asses to the fucking fire. All because they thought that someone's life was worth less than a handful of coins. Naruto stood trembling. This was worse. He had thought that they were just going after those responsible for doing such a terrible thing, but the way his sensei described it meant that the punishment extended beyond them. A fact that didn't sit well with him. But this will affect innocent people too, sensei. I get what they're doing is wrong, but we shouldn't punish those who aren't involved. Noriyuki tipped his hat. I know this may seem cruel, but it's a necessary lesson. Too many countries have citizens who are too passive in what their governments do. They need to be informed and realize that if they don't put scrutiny on those that lead them, then they may wind up being led off a cliff. While the citizens of this land may struggle following this night, it will only embolden them to act so it never happens again, or history will just repeat itself. Empowering the citizens. Naruto had never thought about it like that. Truthfully, it wasn't something he ever considered. He had no idea if the Leaf Village or the Land of Fire had anything that kept people accountable. It was information he was regretting not learning while he was in the academy. Iruka-sensei would probably have covered something like this in class. Naruto let out a deep breath. So while your friends do their parts, what about us? Folding his arms, he stopped to realize another thing he missed, rather someone he missed. I also haven't seen Hirate since this morning. What's his job? Ha ha ha. Well, since Hirate was such a pain in the ass these last 3 weeks, I assigned him to be our whipping boy. Essentially, if there are any obstacles that are too troublesome to handle, my family can call him to solve it. Naruto understood the meaning. If there was someone tough to fight, then Hirate would show up and scare the living shit out of them. If everyone's scattered so far, won't that make it difficult for him to help everyone? Pfft. Ha 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 ha. He'll certainly be getting a lot of cardio tonight then. Tee-hee-hee-hee-hee. Naruto couldn't help but snicker at Hirate's sucky job. As for our job, we get the most fun part of all. The distraction team. By the elated look Noriyuki had, this would also be the most chaotic part of the job. He pulled out a map from his jacket and unrolled it over a large flat rock. It was a map of the Land of Lightning. Naruto had seen enough of them over the last few weeks because they were so close to the country. Right now we are here, Noriyuki said, pointing at a spot between 2 noticeable green dots marked on the map, the town of Ninbo. It's the private land owned by many nobles who are involved in this human trafficking debacle. He then pointed to the other 2 green dots. These 2 places are the Hidden Cloud's primary defensive posts. There is one at the border and another one stationed halfway between the first and the Cloud Village itself. We are going to create 2 sets of clones. The first group will draw ninja near the border by causing a ruckus here in Ninbo. There won't be many who will leave their posts, as they'll try and keep the border secure as much as they can. Naruto nodded. Okay. What did you have in mind? Noriyuki pointed to the town. As you can see, the kind and caring nobles are hosting a party tonight. We're going to go see what kind of food they are serving. Naruto grinned, rubbing his hands together. Party crashing rich assholes. I can get behind that. I'll bet. The second team of clones will attack and take over the second defensive base. Let's just say both the border station and the Cloud Village is going to get some unique intel on some hostile intruders. It will allow us to control their movements to a degree. Rolling his eyes, Naruto scoffed. Send them on the world's funniest goose chase is more like it. Oh, Naruto-kun. You know me so well. They both laughed maniacally to each other. Naruto was loving this plan so far. Their job was to thin out all the potential enemies Noriyuki's friends would face by drawing them towards their location. He was sure there was much more his sensei had in store for anyone they crossed paths with. A small part of him almost felt sorry for those that did. So while our clones are off being a nuisance, what are we going to be doing, sensei? Noriyuki pointed to the map again. This time it landed on the red circle that marked the Hidden Cloud Village. We're going to go see the Hokage. Naruto took a double take. Almost not believing his own ears. The Hokage? Of course. How else is he to know what a shit job he's doing? Mew ha 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 ha. Naruto watched, gaping as his sensei hooked up a wireless radio around his neck. He couldn't imagine that their mission would involve the Hokage. It was like going up against the Hokage. If they were anything alike, then this mission would be the single greatest and toughest he's had in his young life. A fact that really sunk in just how important this was. Naruto felt his sensei place a hand on his back. He shifted the frequency of the radio while clearing his throat. All right, boys and girls. Our target's pants are down and their junk is hanging in the wind. Let's show them how small it actually is. Canonical Omake. Noriyuki-sensei's third special challenge. Naruto was walking through the streets with his sensei. They had just finished their meal for the evening and now it was time for the special challenge. The boy groaned. After yesterday it was hard to look at a pretty woman without imagining them without clothes on. When he mentioned that to his sensei, the reply he got from him was, "I always imagine women without clothes on." Naruto face-palmed hard, knowing that should have been a given. Stupid perverted sensei. Why can't any of my teachers be normal? Noriyuki spun around, striking a pose. Are you ready, Naruto? Challenge number 2. It's not gonna be something involving naked women, is it? His sensei stuck out both arms, pointing at him obnoxiously. It's not going to involve naked women. Falling over, Naruto could only let out a dull groan. Can't it be anything else? Why? Don't tell you're sick of seeing naked women? Gasp. You want to see naked guys? Noriyuki wrapped his arms around his body, raising a leg like he wasn't wearing clothes. Naruto bolted up. You. Get this through your head, sensei. I like girls. Excellent, then you'll love today's challenge. We're going to the hot springs. Hot springs. Like peeping? Ha. I'll have you know I have already done that so many times it's basically a Wednesday for me. He had spent a lot of time trying to get his sexy jutsu down. Sure, he was beat up a lot when he tried to enter the women's bath using it, but it definitely worked, some of the time. A shadow cast over his sensei's eyes. Tipping his hat, he spoke in a terrifying voice. You think today's challenge is a simple peeping mission? You poor deluded fool. Come with me. Naruto was grabbed by the collar of his shirt and dragged across town towards their hotel. The lady at the front desk gave them an odd look as Naruto was carried like baggage. Naruto could only hang like a piece of cloth. Whatever he was going to do, it would probably scar him. Noriyuki strode confidently into the women's changing room, poking his head around to see if there was anyone inside. He stepped into the baths as well. Luckily they were both empty. Naruto could only imagine the trouble they would be in if there was. Alright, the first thing we're going to do is take all the bath items from the women's side. This means all towels, clothes, brushes, and soaps. Hop to it. Naruto didn't ask why he was doing it. Taking items like this didn't seem to be valuable, and he was sure the hotel wouldn't really care. Naruto had a creeping suspicion that whatever his sensei was up to would defy his expectations. Yesterday certainly was. It took him a few minutes, but he quickly gathered everything up into a little pile. He set them down on the wooden bench in the middle of the change room. Noriyuki nodded, counting up each and every item to himself. Good. There are roughly 30 towels, 45 hand cloths, 25 bars of soap, and 12 brushes, making the total 112 items. It is currently 5:45 p.m. In 15 minutes the bath will be open to the female guests looking to soak after dinner. The bath closes at 10 p.m. sharp. Listen closely to what I am going to tell you. Naruto gulped. For each and every item here you will create a shadow clone and have them transform into said item. You, the original, will place them where you found the originals. Your clones are only allowed to dispel once they have been used, either by putting them into the laundry hamper or once the baths close. A sly smile formed on his face. You can think of this like infiltration training. No big deal for someone who's going to surpass all the Hokage. Naruto's jaw dropped. His face felt like it was an oven. This was much worse than simple peeping. He clung to his body with a weak trembling. It was one thing to watch a woman bathe, but this, words could not form to yell out the absurdity of it. You're insane. Naruto barely muttered. Ha 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 ha. Oh Naruto. Just you wait. I'm going to beat the shyness out of you. Even if it's the last thing I do. That's it for part 4. Thank you for watching and see you on the next video.